when I heard that Thomas was trying to get me fired, and then I also got sort of this elusive, I perceived as a threat, where it was basically, and I'm not quoting verbatim, but it was something to the effect of, if Carc knows what's best for him, he is going to forget that this wallet map ever exists, and he's not going to say a word to anyone.
Whoa.
And so, gloves are off.
Right.
Wow.
Right. And I go, okay, so this is what I'm going to do. The RBTC was going to blow up everything with this Hank audio.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, at first I thought John was maybe the bad guy. I'm not sure because I listened to everything this group was saying.
Yeah.
But then they peeled off, and now the evidence in front of me is like, maybe these guys were the bad guys all along.
Right.
Right. So maybe all these things that I heard about John weren't true.
Uh-huh.
And I go, oh my gosh, like I was wrong. Right. Like I had my suspicions about John, but like I actually think like he may not be the bad guy at all in this story.
Right.
And so they wanted to blow up this Hank audio and leak it to everyone, which was going to hurt a lot of, in my mind, innocent SafeMoon holders.
Which did.
Yeah. And so I brokered a deal. So I go, okay, Ginger, if you don't drop this audio and I manage to convince John to handle this internally, then don't leak the audio, and then that won't harm the SafeMoon holders, right? And then this problem can be solved internally. So I looked at it as, what's the way that I can minimize harm, right? Because sure, they could blow this up and hurt SafeMoon, but at this point, from my perspective, I'm like, is SafeMoon, did they actually do anything wrong?
Yeah.
You know, based off what I'm seeing with the Piggy stuff, all the stuff that I saw on the blockchain was not actually like SafeMoon stuff.
Yeah.
Which I had my concerns about for sure for a long time. But the Piggy stuff, like I had the wallet map stuff, and that just freaked me out.
Mm-hmm.
And I got my little ominous threats, and Thomas tried to get me fired.
Yeah.
So it kind of made, okay. So I went to Charles and John, and I go, Charles, John.
Was that the day we met?
No.
Okay.
No. So I go, Charles, John, here's the thing. All this stuff that you've been hearing about with Hank and Thomas and Kyle, it's true. And I have proof. So I shared with them the Hank audio.
Yeah.
And John flipped his crap.
Yeah, I
right.
could see.
Because John didn't realize how much these guys like really
actually
hated him,
Mm-hmm.
like hated his guts. And so that was interesting because my goal in brokering this deal was to make sure that the audio didn't leak so that the holders weren't hurt, and so that this could be handled internally. Because I wanted this to be handled internally in a way where what Hank did was wrong.
Yeah.
And what I believe Thomas and Kyle did was wrong too. So in my mind, this needed to be handled quietly first, just so that it could be just put under the rug in a way. Because in my mind, I was like, well, if this is all put out there all at once, and again, I kind of regret that. I kind of wish, like looking back at it now, I didn't know everything I knew about John.
Yeah.
Then maybe it should have just let it blow up and let the chips fall where they may. But at the time, I really felt like I was trying to do something right, because I still was hoping that SafeMoon was what it was in my mind to be. So I talked with John and Charles. I'm like, look, okay, here's the Hank audio. Here's the deal. They said that they're not going to leak it if you guys handle this internally with Hank and with Thomas and all that. That way, not everyone leaves at once. This whole suicide pact thing doesn't happen. I told them about the suicide pact, right? Right? Because that's what's going to happen is you're going to have Hank potentially rip the cord out from underneath your Twitter or your Discord. Mm-hmm. You know, here's their plan too. I didn't want them to enact their plan of just trying to nuke SafeMoon and bring everyone over to their side. And the Hank audio was explosive, right?
I love how, not to cut you off, but I love how in a matter of a few months, you go from innocent Reddit mod to negotiating a turf war between warring cryptocurrency factions.
Exactly.
You're just caught in the middle.
I'm just caught in the middle of this. And the thing
crazy.
was I was right in the middle. I was kind of known as a neutral party. I was known as the guy that was in all the chats that just kind of hung around and said, said nice things from time to time. I was known as like the nice guy who just kind of just chill, was very chill, right? I was not militant in the least.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's why I was
You never
sort of,
have been,
yeah,
right?
I
In all
try
your
not
tweets, you're never militant. It's always like,
And now you have
here's
the weight of
opinions
both
and potential
parties on your
facts.
shoulders.
yeah. So that's why I gained John's trust.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
It kind of makes sense now, doesn't it?
it does.
Because I went to John and Charles and I go, here's the Hank audio. Here's the problem that you have.
Yeah.
And like, this needs to be fixed. Like, fix your crap. Here's your issue. Here's the people that, here's what you know, you have people in your organization that are going out and creating tokens and threatening to like ruin your project, but they're part of your project and they're part of the face of your project. Fix it, right? To me, that felt like a reasonable position at the time. And so I worked with, I showed them the wallet map as well. I went through and went through the Hank audio with them. I explained my perspective from the RBTC side of things and all that. John hated Ginger, right, because of the whole RBTC war against SafeMoon and all that. Internally on the Discord for SafeMoon, I was a pariah because I was friends with Ginger, and so therefore I couldn't be trusted, right? And so it was really interesting because like I was never, it was a really weird like political situation. The long and short of it is I met with John's attorney. I went through and explained the whole thing.
Wow. I forgot his name, but
yeah. So I sat down in a Mexican restaurant and talked to his attorney for like 2 hours. It was audio taped. And it was really interesting. He picked my brain. He asked everything from the beginning.
Yeah.
And one question that stuck out with me from the lawyer was, have you ever seen any evidence of liquidity being misspent in SafeMoon? And like that caught me off guard because he was asking me a lot of questions that were like, tell me the story, tell me what a liquidity pool is, tell me how this works. And then he hit me with that question and then immediately registered in my mind. I'm like, this guy knows way more than he's leading on.
Do you think he was asking for John or was he looking into John? I
don't know.
I think as well, like that same lawyer was his mom's lawyer and his dad's lawyer.
Oh.
If I'm correct about the lawyer situation, but maybe.
But it was suddenly,
a good question.
Yeah, and it was suddenly very interesting because I'm like, wait a second, and I go, well, I haven't looked into because I didn't legitimately, I didn't go through and investigate like I did Piggy
and
SafeMoon like I did Piggy because, it was really hard to track where the money was going with SafeMoon. There's just so much obfuscation. Yeah, and when you're dealing with third-party exchanges, they're black boxes. You can't see what happens after that fact. So to me, it felt like SafeMoon was a dead end.
Yeah.
And TNG Systems did a lot of work that kind of broke out how a lot of those liquidity movements worked.
Yeah.
But like in my mind, I was like, well, some of those things could be justified as legitimate expenses. So it's really hard because I couldn't see inside the exchanges to see what was being used for legitimate expenses and what wasn't. That was the difficulty with SafeMoon, is it was obvious they were using LP money, but they were also justifying it by saying we already informed the community that we would use it to help run the business and things like that.
Yeah,
I'm glad you're saying that because you are coming from a place with much more blockchain knowledge than either of us. And people ask us all the time, "How did you not know?" And we're like, "I don't know. I could see this, but So it's good to hear that.
Well, it was hard. Like I can go through and search wallet maps and trace down transactions and all that. And from the onset, without a really serious, hard look, like step-by-step investigation of all liquidity movements, like without looking for it, you would not necessarily know. And even if you did, you would see liquidity movements and spending from the liquidity, but you'd have no context for it. Mm-hmm. Like I said, everything on the blockchain, every transaction is a story. Yeah. I may look at a wallet and be like, they sent $10,000 from this wallet to this wallet. There must be something bad happening. Then you go and you ask the person, well, was this? And they'd be like, oh, this was me sending money to my wife, right? Or, oh, this is my secondary wallet that I have. Or, oh, this was actually payment for services rendered for XYZ. So like everything is a story. So it's hard to jump to conclusions.
Yeah.
By all means, be skeptical, when you see big movements, you want to look into it and dive into it. But I tend to not be the person that jumps to a conclusion. I really try to dig in and find out. And that's why that wallet map perturbed me so much and why I didn't just go crazy public with it either.
Right.
But some weird things happened after I sent that wallet map to Ragnar, who then sent it to Thomas, was then I started getting like threatening NFTs.
Whoa.
Because there was this, there were some wallets that were tangentially like 1 or 2 hops away from like a Probit hack, I believe, in like 2018 for many, many millions of dollars.
Yeah.
And so that's where I was like, and one of my questions is like, why are these wallets associated with a Probit hack? That's weird. And the Probit hack was attributed to some hacker group called Lazarus Hacker Group.
Yeah.
Well, I started receiving NFTs with a Lazarus Hacker Group image on it.
No.
Whoa.
Yeah. So I knew that some of those guys were very well aware of my wallet map and the work and some of the things that I was trying to dig out.
Crazy.
And that
Scary.
I felt very threatened by it. And I think maybe now in retrospect, like it freaked me out. Like I ended up buying a gun, right? I like would close my blinds. Like I felt like I was really threatened because of the fact that I had all this information about Piggy and all the wallet maps and everything, and they knew that I knew.
Yeah.
And I felt like
they knew your wallet.
And they knew my wallet, and I'm doxxed. My face, my name is out there.
Yeah.
It's easy to find my address, right? So like I started to get really worried, and I'm like, these guys have a ton of money. They have a ton of resources and maybe moral scruples. I don't know where they lie on that. So I started to get legitimately concerned about my safety. So like at this point, that's why I tried to, instead of just blowing everything up and potentially putting myself or my family at risk, that's why I tried to like work directly with SafeMoon to like see if they can handle some things internally on their own.
Right.
But anyway, I digress. So once I started getting asked about the attorney and all that kind of stuff, I told my side of the story, and I was really focused on like the other guys.
Yeah.
Less focused on John. And I thought to myself, like, wow, like maybe I was wrong about John all along, my skepticism, like I'm going to give him a second chance.
Yeah.
And so that's when because I thought, like if these guys are going to like be potentially like threatening me, like low key, there's some weirdness happening here. Like maybe this side of the group, this side of the aisle is the side that's right. And I was mistaken there as well, which is unfortunate. And so that's when you guys saw me come in like late December of 2021 and early January of 2022 is when I came in and interviewed for the director of technology role. That was a very illuminating interview with John because
was it on camping chairs in the office?
Yeah, we went into like that weird booth thing and talked for a while. But I heard some really illuminating things. But the sentiment that I want to share from that experience of having that interview with John and talking with John like more directly than just talking about like the Hank Audio stuff, is that John would say a lot of stuff. He had a lot of promises. He talked a lot about the cool things, the awesome things they're doing, how they're not worried about money at all. They're covered for years. They're not worried about, like they're going to be launching satellites into space. Their LPs
eating satellites into space is how he said it.
Yeeting satellites into space. And I'm like, okay, that the LP was insured from Lloyd's of London. So call us a scam one more time. That was one of the things he said. He talked about how he talked about Hank and he talked about Thomas, and he's like, thank you for all that. It was good to like know that I was being attacked internally, and so thank you for helping me take care of those issues. And I'm like, sure, oh, let me back up a little bit. So the audio leaked anyway. That was not me. I swear on a stack of Bibles, right?
Yeah.
What happened is when I was talking with John about this, I showed him the Hank audio and all that. I'm like, yeah, I didn't want it to leak because I didn't want to harm SafeMoon holders. And he goes, I can't say this, but maybe it wouldn't be a bad thing if it leaked.
He did that a lot.
Sounds like him, because he hated his hate for others was more than him wanting to see the community succeed.
And that was my sentiment too. And I ignored him on that because to me it kind of sounded like a bit of a dog whistle of like, go ahead and leak it. Right. Yeah. And I'm like, no, the whole point of brokering this deal
was to not leak.
It was to not hurt the community by having the Hank audio leak. Handle it internally. Get rid of Hank. Get rid of Thomas. Right. But like, don't hurt the community for no reason.
Yeah.
Right. Or totally torpedo or sink the project.
Yeah.
because I felt like it really was a nuclear bomb, right? And I was trying to like just dismantle it because I wanted the project to be successful. I wanted the holders to be successful.
Right.
I didn't really give two rats ass about John, right?
Yeah.
I didn't have like a close personal relationship with him.
Right.
In fact, every interaction I have with him, I was a little skeeved out. I mean,
good way of putting it.
no, like even those
People
conversations that I would take notes, contemporaneous notes after every meeting I had with him because I was so freaked out. I took contemporaneous notes every meeting I had, every voice call I had with him. I took notes on. After my interview, I took contemporaneous notes after the interview.
Yeah.
I did not trust this guy more than I could spit, right? And so going in for the interview, I went like, okay, I'm going to give him a second chance. I'm going to see like how this really was. And then it was a gish gallop of techno babble from him.
Yeah.
And I learned some really valuable lessons in that interview, that the 100% tax, right? He wanted to keep it.
Yeah.
And he didn't want to like actually do anything for the SafeMoon holders on top of it. So we had a discussion about that. I didn't see eye to eye on him about that.
Yeah.
We talked about liquidity. We didn't see eye to eye on liquidity. He still offered me the job verbally, right? But I was like, I don't know if I want to work for SafeMoon after all these like things that I heard about him in person. Because like if he would have sat me down and be like, hey, let's level, let's be real. He was very genuine and like, and explained and showed all the things that he was working on. Like I think it would have been a different story. I probably would have worked for SafeMoon.
Yeah.
But the reality was he just came across to me like a used car salesman. Everything that he said was very.
He was. Yeah. That's his background.
Yeah, he was very adamant and pushy on a lot of the things. It felt like he was constantly bragging to me about everything that he was saying about all the successes of SafeMoon, where it's going, all these wonderful things. And I just had to be left being like, oh, wow. Oh, cool. Oh, that's neat. But all the things that I really sat down and talked to him about, I'm like, okay, if I were to come in as a director of technology, here's what I'd want to do. Here's how I'd want to do it and all that.
Yeah.
And I learned really quickly that if I were to work for this guy, that I would not be delegated my area of responsibility, that I would be basically managed to do things very explicitly based off what he was saying.
Yes.
And so I picked up on that real quick because I've met and worked with people like that before, which is why I'm like, I don't think I could work with this guy because I don't think I'd have the autonomy to actually make a positive impact and a positive change.
Right.
You were very right.
Yeah, and so that's the impression that I got from the interview. But again, just a lot of crap with promises and hype, and we're going here and we're doing that. That just really, really kind of set the wrong tone.
Yeah.
And then things started to go downhill community-wise once I left, because I left in January to work on building out my non-custodial self-custody wallet.
Yeah.
So I focused on that. And I just left my job and decided to work on that for about 6 months full time. And during that time, that's when Chris Harris from the community, he knew he caught wind or whatever that like from the whole situation, happened with like RBTC and whatnot. And he lumped me in when the Coffeezilla videos dropped. He falsely claimed that I was in the videos. I was not. And then he doubled down because then he saw the payments on the blockchain from Kyle to me back in the early days when I worked for Kyle on that separate project.
Yeah.
And then he grilled me on it. He's like, "Hey, what was this for?" And I go, "It's an NDA. I can't answer."
Yeah.
This was before, Thomas was indicted, obviously.
Yeah.
And so then he jumped on that. And so I became a pariah of the community due to SafeMoon, due to Chris Harris, and his whole campaign against me because, once you leave SafeMoon, then you're the bad guy.
Yeah.
Every time.
But people don't realize that the reason why Hank left was because of me. The reason Thomas left was because of me.
Yep.
So I was really trying to look out for the SafeMoon community.
Yeah.
And then I left, and then I became a pariah, and that's okay. At the end of the day, I kind of look at it as, you don't necessarily need to seek validation or vindication. You can have a whole community telling you that you're a piece of crap. At the end of the day, like, can you look at yourself in the mirror? Can you say, like, did I try to do everything right by the way I saw it at the time? Do I have regrets? For sure.
Yeah.
Am I perfect? No. But I think we are all on this journey
Yeah.
together to a certain degree or different perspectives. I don't think there's bad, like there's not doesn't wholly objectively good people and wholly objective bad people. It's all shades of gray.
Yeah.
And based off our situations, we all had that hope.
Yeah.
We all had that hope that something good was going to come of this project.
Yeah.
But time after time, event after event, it was mismanaged, poorly managed, things miscommunicated, things misunderstood. This could have been absolutely amazing if it was managed properly.
Right.
Like this could have changed DeFi. I always told people SafeMoon has to succeed, because if SafeMoon fails, then I think that's a huge blow to DeFi.
Yeah.
And I think it has been. SafeMoon is a perfect example of something that if it would have followed through on its promises, we would be in a completely different situation than we are now. But now the SEC has sort of like a foot in the door now.
Yeah.
You know, based off of on DeFi protocol. They just went out and said, okay, well now it's a security.
Yeah.
You know, and we wouldn't have had that conversation probably if things would have worked out properly, if we had managed it more appropriately.
Yeah, and that's something I told in the last episode that we did, or the first one, kind of backwards, right? Where I was just telling Jonas, like, the opportunity or the potential SafeMoon had was so great, but it was just like the people in charge, the people that were supposed to really guide the ship, just fumbled the ball and didn't manage and didn't do the things correctly. And obviously, as we see now, these three are indicted. Just not. It wasn't good. I don't know how you can fumble that bad.
Yeah, and to an extreme degree, not only did they fumble, but now John's in jail facing prison time. The company's bankrupt, liquidated, dissolved. Yeah. Bad.
And
didn't just fizzle out. It
the DeFi
blew
side
up.
of things, because we went to all these events and people would say SafeMoon was what got me into DeFi or got me into crypto, and you're like, gosh,
it was such an opportunity that was lost. And one of the things that I grieve probably more than anything is the people that put so much time and money into this project. I mean, because we all believed in it to a certain degree.
Yeah.
You know, we all wanted it to be successful, and we all worked in different ways to try to make it successful. And I mean, it's, again, for anyone listening in on this, you could be like, oh, these are a bunch of people who are insiders. They could have gone to the police. They could have gone to the FBI or whatever. Yeah. I'll tell you this much, right? I'll drop a bomb on you guys.
Okay.
I talked with the FBI about what I knew early on, before the Coffeezilla video dropped. And my reasoning for it is I will let the FBI know what I know and let the chips fall where they may. You know, it wasn't necessarily like, oh, these are people who are bad or whatever. I laid it all out there on what is and what isn't, and what I saw and what I didn't see. Because I saw nothing that was explicitly like full on evidence of a crime, but I had a lot of suspicion, and there was a lot of concerns that I did share, and a lot of context that I was able to share.
Right.
So when people ask me, Carc, why didn't you go to the authorities? I did.
Yeah.
And it's not something that I wanted to shout from the rooftops. It was something that I did because it was, well, for one, I was asked. The FBI told me, like, we can't stop you from you telling other people that you talked to us, but we'd ask you not to.
Yeah.
And so now that everything's out there, now I don't feel uncomfortable telling people that, yes, I went to the FBI. I talked to the FBI early. I talked to them at length. We were on a first name basis for quite a while.
Wow.
And this was in 2022.
Yeah.
So this was after I'd interviewed with them, after I left. Then I went through the whole Chris Harris boondoggle. And then if he wanted to make a futter out of me, he did, because it definitely soured me to the sentiment of the community, because of how easily the community just shifted against you at the drop of the hat. You know, like they went after one of the, you know, the strong believers, one of the people who wanted it to be successful, and then be like, you know what, like, okay, well, kid gloves are off. Like, let's go through here and let's figure out what's the right thing to do in this context, because there's always an objectively right and wrong thing to do. I couldn't sit on the sidelines. I couldn't not at least put the story out there from what I saw. So we obviously see the results of a lot of this, you know what, it's one of those situations where if I could go back in time knowing what I knew now, I think I probably would have been a lot more aggressive. I just didn't have all the facts on the table.
Right.
So the one thing I do want to say is that I do regret the role that I played. It's one of those situations where, you know, you hoped for the best, but you wanted to just be careful just in case it was the worst.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it was the worst. So I think I separated myself at a good time when I really started to kind of like lose faith in John.
Yeah.
When I had that interview, I got the gish galop of excuses and false promises in my mind and all this stuff. Like I knew I couldn't work with him. A lot of the stuff that I heard about John were validated in those meetings with him. So I knew that I probably, like, by denying the job, that, you know, I might even be thrown under the bus. Yeah. That's okay. You know, one of the things that I found is that the community is scary. The SafeMoon community is absolutely frightening.
You put out a tweet once, signs you're in a cult, and every single one of those boxes, check for the SafeMoon community. It's a scary place.
It is. It can get intense.
And I mean, I think for a long time I really tried to, because people have asked me, like, why haven't I gone like full blown, like pull off all the stops and gone full blown fudder? And I think it was more that when you're dealing with people who are struggling to come to terms with a certain truth and you're trying to inform them of this, you know, you attract more flies with honey than vinegar type of thing, right? And so for me, I think I took flack from both sides. I took flack from the SafeMoon community because, you know, like, I was a fudder. Like, that's just how they saw me. I'm a fudder. I'm horrible. I'm disingenuous. And then on the fudding community, like, Carc is a fence sitter. He won't actually commit to, like, fully just fudding the project, right? And, like, I tell people, I'm like, look, like, the reason why I'm not going balls to the wall just trying to just, like, dismantle SafeMoon is because that's not how you reach people. Yeah. So the goal and the intent through all of this, and sort of my my demeanor in all of this, was not necessarily to be a fence sitter. I chose my side. Yeah. My side was with the community and making sure the community was successful. Yeah. And when that failed, because I saw the writing on the wall, then I wanted to make sure that justice was done. Yeah. And that where the chips fall where they may. Because it wasn't for me. I lacked context that the authorities had. Yeah. I had no insight into bank accounts. I had no insight into exchanges. Everything that I saw was very suspicious. Yeah. There's a lot of red flags, but in similar circumstances to you guys, you saw a lot of red flags. Yeah. But the problem is when you don't see direct evidence, right? It's really difficult because you're like, I still want to hope that it's not this way, right? You know, and you may be actively even working to make sure it's not that way behind the scenes. And the thing is you have something like test of loyalty almost. Like, it's like if you're part of the SafeMoon community, you have to be loyal to a fault. Yeah. You can't be skeptical. You can't be asking questions. I hate the word FUD. Yeah. I absolutely hate the word FUD because what it does is it's one of those keywords, you know, fear, uncertainty, and doubt, where it shuts off your brain from looking at things objectively and analyzing things critically. Right. Because you should be able to do that. You might be able to like a project, even love a project almost. Yeah. But you should be able to criticize the things that you love objectively. Yeah. And so that's what I tried to do, is even internally, like, I disagree with how these things are happening internally. And John didn't want that. John didn't want that feedback of, here's the problems, let's address these problems, to be proactive about solving the FUD. It was ignore the FUD. This is FUD. Yeah. And that's a psychological attempt to just say, you're either with us or you're against us. Right. And it creates this factionalization. And that's what I saw in SafeMoon that I took the biggest issue with, was that you're with us or you're against us. You're either you're on Team SafeMoon or you're a dirty, rotten, no good fudder. And where does Carc lie, of all people, you know, the great fence sitter, right, in all of this? And the reality is I went back and forth. Yeah. At first, I thought John may be the bad guy. Then I thought the other devs were the bad guys. And then, you know, with this idea of like maybe John wasn't the bad guy. And then I went and met John and go, gosh, this guy's, my opinion, trash, right? And then these poor SafeMoon holders.
Yeah.
And then at that point, it was talking with the FBI. It was talking with other people, trying everything I could from more of the outside to make sure that the truth would come to light.
Yeah.
I got another bomb to drop on you.
Yeah.
So in one of Coffeezilla's videos, there was someone named anonymously in there. That was me.
Whoa, that's cool.
So, you know,
that's awesome.
And it was, again, not because, you know, I want to FUD SafeMoon. Coffeezilla called me up. He asked me questions, and he goes, I gave him answers based off my perspective.
Right.
And let the chips fall where they may. Let the truth live wherever it exists. And so if Coffeezilla has something and he wants to put it out there and people want to come to their own decisions and make their own decisions, it's up to them.
Yeah.
But my goal was to not have Coffeezilla go too far either. So in my mind, it was, I don't necessarily just want to go on like a hate campaign.
Yeah.
I want there to be truth. So if someone wants to talk to me about SafeMoon and want to hear about my experiences and what I've seen and what I heard and all that, I'll talk to them. Whether it's the FBI, whether it's Coffeezilla, I'll talk about it, because now I don't necessarily want to put my name and my face out there, which is really funny because here I am, you know, putting my name and my face out here. But it's over. Like, let's be honest, Frank, it's over. It's finally over. The nightmare is over. Yeah. And to anyone in the community, you know, the community, there's not really much of a community left. Yeah. There's people who I think are, they love the relationships that they made. And I appreciate that. Yeah. I think, you know, it really was a strong, tight-knit community. There was nothing like it. But as Coffeezilla once said too, it was one of the most toxic, hateful communities at times as well.
Oh yeah.
There's really good people as part of it. We're really good friends. There were really bad people that were part of it as well. We were bitter enemies. Yeah. But at the end of the day, the reality is like it was a social phenomenon. SafeMoon was a social phenomenon as much as it was anything else. Yeah. And it failed despite having all of the proper opportunities on the silver platter. If anyone else, like if I could have just gone and randomly picked people out of a parking lot to lead SafeMoon, it would have been successful, in my opinion.
I agree.
Yeah, we talk about that a lot. So much potential, and then what happened. My last question for you is, so you had an interesting perspective once you stepped away, because we joined pretty much the same time you left, so we had our SafeMoon blinders on. We were right there up close. What was it like watching the company crumble, watching from a distance?
So, I mean, SafeMoon's in my backyard. I mean, it's 5 minutes away from where I live. In June, I was appointed by Governor Cox to the Blockchain and Digital Innovation Task Force. From then, my perspective shifted and changed from more of, I'm a disaffected person who is seeing all these weird things happening with SafeMoon, to now I have a civic duty in the state of Utah to make sure that bad stuff doesn't happen. Yeah. And so there's some big wins that we were able to put forth here in the state, such as the Utah DAO Act. It's really cool, actually. So Wyoming has a DAO Act. People heard about, you know, you can form DAOs in Wyoming. Yeah. In Utah, we followed a koala DAO model. So we implemented legislation, and that's what the Blockchain Digital Innovation Task Force does. It's an official government task force for the state of Utah to advise legislators and help draft legislation. So we helped advise and help draft this Utah DAO Act that, based off the koala DAO model, it wasn't wrapped in an LLC. It's its own separate legal entity.
That's cool.
It's limited liability DAO, yeah. And so we have an LLD or a DAO here in Utah now, thanks to some of the efforts of the Blockchain Digital Innovation Task Force, cool. which I serve on. But since I was appointed to that position, it definitely went from, you know, oh, I'm just sort of like this disaffected person who just kind of, you know, SafeMoon's going downhill. Like, I hope it's successful for the holders, but like, I don't have a lot of faith in it anymore. Like, they're squandering every opportunity they have. To now, I need to be vigilant about protecting citizens of the state. Yeah. And that's where my mindset really shifted, I think, to, okay, I have an opportunity to actually do something about this now. Right. So one of the things we're actually considering here at the state level is figuring out a way to not over-regulate. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I think Governor Cox and I see eye to eye, and why I was appointed after going to a luncheon and explaining my point of view on governance, is that part of the role of government is sometimes stepping out of the way. And when it comes to DeFi, I wanted to be a voice where I could say, well, there's obviously some areas where government needs to step out of the way of DeFi. But I think SafeMoon is an example of how you could have rampant, in my opinion, fraud of what's happening, and it's right under our noses. And what an embarrassment to the state of Utah that, you know, you have a multi-billions of assets being handled within SafeMoon, like this token with multi-billion-dollar market cap here in Utah, that ends up where the leadership gets not convicted, but, you know, alleged of fraud, and now currently sitting in a jail cell. And like, what an embarrassment to the state. And so how do we avoid that from happening in the future? So one of the things I've been really working on is evaluating sensible regulation, maybe even criminal legislation, to where my frustrations were, and I was bringing this up, was before the indictment dropped, I go, guys, this is happening under our noses. And there's nothing that we apparently can do because we don't have the resources to investigate this. We don't have the knowledge or the manpower to investigate because we have laws on the books for fraud in Utah. But there's a lack of clarity on how this actually works with tokens and DeFi. So if someone is egregiously spending from a liquidity pool that doesn't belong to them, is there anything we could do in Utah state law that can identify and rectify that? And some states have gone too far. New York, for example, they made some weird arbitrary limit. Like if you suddenly withdraw more than 10% of the liquidity pool or something like that, then it could be considered a rug pool. Like how arbitrary that is. So, I rug pulled 9.9%, Your Honor, not 10%. So therefore it's legal, right? So you got to be really careful when you write laws that you don't just create room where the red tape and the legislation actually enables fraud. So trying to come up with sensible, like, what is liquidity theft is one of the things I've been kind of working on and discussing internally with the task force. That includes things like if you have a liquidity pool, things like you are not able to spend from it without things like explicit holder authorization. And what does that mean? That might be like if you have a DAO, then you might have to do like a vote on the DAO in order to spend money from the liquidity pool. In cases like that, it might be justified because the holders are authorizing the usage of funds that are not yours. So if you have a DAO and you say, hey, we're going to spend money from the liquidity, that's really the holders giving money, almost like capital donating to for the furtherance of their cause or whatever. So, but yeah, to answer your question on what was it like to see the downfall of SafeMoon after the fact, it was an intense curiosity because of my being at the center of a lot of this stuff. So, I mean, my perspective on being on SafeMoon, why I was also like watching everything happen and unfold in RBTC, to brokering the Hank deal, to, you know, nearly working for SafeMoon aside from just a contractor moderating stuff, and being, you know, loved at one point and then hated and then kind of in the middle. Like I've been in the middle of so much. But the reality is, and like I can sit here and people can draw their own conclusions, right? I'm not here to justify or vindicate myself in any way, shape, or form. To tell a story. And what am I going to do? Like sit on my hands and not tell a story that needs to be told? A story of how normal people, normal ass people, getting together, suddenly facing down potentially millions and millions of dollars in ways to enrich themselves, how greed can take over and ruin people. And people will go through heaven and earth to justify bad behavior as well of bad actors. Because if you see something and you just call it FUD, or if you want to believe in something so bad because your money's tied up in it, we saw that so much from the community. And so, you know, my message to the SafeMoon community is you watched it. You were there the whole entire time, and you believed and you held firm, right? And I don't fault them for that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you need to be able to take a step back outside of your own bag, outside of your own bubble, and look at things objectively.
Yeah.
Because we would not be in this situation if the community, if the moderation team, if people who worked at SafeMoon, no offense, right?
Yeah.
If they were all able to sound the alarm sooner rather than later, this might have been avoided.
Yeah.
And again, it's not fault finding or placing blame, right? I mean, I think we're all to a degree, like I said, I apologize for the fact that I was a moderator, that I helped enable this. I thought it was different.
Yeah.
That doesn't justify it. People got hurt, and I was part of that process. And yes, the left hand didn't know what the right hand was doing, but it gives you a sense of guilt, a sense of resounding guilt for having participated in something that you thought was good that ended up being bad. And ultimately, I think at the end of the day, you know, I can't be held accountable for John's actions. You know, he has to go through that himself.
Yeah.
But we're all left kind of holding the bag of our own experiences of, you know, we put our livelihoods, we put our reputations, all on the line. And here we are talking about the broken pieces of something that could have been the next big thing in crypto.
Yeah.
And now it's completely liquidated and gone. And for what? So that John could LARP as CEO for 2 years?
Essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I applaud your bravery.
Yeah.
You know, speaking out to the FBI and to Coffeezilla. I remember there was one time where John told us if we ever talked to anyone, we would be fired and sued.
Yeah.
Because we had other reporters reach out to us. Hey, you're an employee. Can we interview you? And it was always, no, you can't say anything. So yeah, I applaud you for, and what you're doing for Utah. Because one of our goals of starting this podcast was how can we stop this, or at least help stop this from happening again? At least we can make people aware of the warning signs, the red flags. But what you're doing is awesome.
Yeah.
Well, and I'll say this too. There's going to be people who come on and be like, oh, these people are just clout chasing off of the dregs of SafeMoon. I will say, I don't give a flying rat's ass about clout.
Yeah.
Does anyone care about clout from the SafeMoon community anymore? No, right? And like the thing is too, like I've walked into the lion's den. Like you know, you go into like the 365 spaces and they'll tear people to shreds. You know, you'll walk into the SafeMoon spaces, they'll tear people to shreds, right? And like Twitter is like a cesspool of toxicity and like ego. And at the end of the day, like I don't care what the inmates in the asylum are saying. I really don't. I really don't. And like I step away from Twitter, you know, there's no ego wrapped up in it. Like the people in the asylum can be talking about you day in and day out, and you're miles away. They're still locked in there. Yeah. You know, and the thing is Twitter is an echo chamber because you follow people who follow SafeMoon, who follow these like little, you know, you all follow each other and it turns into a giant circle jerk of following each other. Yeah. And the only thing that's left is that you're actually like outside of the DeFi community now. Yeah. You're not even part of the crypto community. You go and you say, good morning, you know, like a good crypto Twitter fiend, right? The reality is the rest of crypto Twitter has moved on. Yeah. And you're left, like the people on Twitter are literally their own separate little community that's only interfacing with themselves. Yeah. And they don't see it. They don't realize it. They think everything they see is what everyone else is talking about. Right. They're relegated to a corner. You're in a corner. You need to follow other people and actually like step outside of your bubble. Right. Because there's more to life than, you know, the people you've been following on Twitter for the past, you know, 2 years. It doesn't matter. That bubble is dead. And the problem is, and this is what I'm seeing, and I know that like you're going to bring on some other people who may even be potentially like, you know, I would say this. Other crypto projects exist that are on the same trajectory as SafeMoon. Yeah. That are doing things the wrong way.
100%.
And I will actively speak up and talk about it now. I'm not afraid what other people say. People are going to be like, you're a dirty, rotten futter or whatever. At this point, it's getting the information out there. Yeah. You know, if you launch a token and you don't do it the right way, if you break SEC regulations, if you think that you can just launch a token and it's a way to bypass SEC regulations, it's not the case, right? If you use a token launch as operating capital, you're in trouble. Yeah. Full stop. And that's the warning that I want to put out there to other token projects as well, is we've wised up and we know how the game is played now.
Yeah.
Being able to reproduce what happened at SafeMoon is going to be far more difficult now because, I mean, if I knew what I knew now versus then,
Yeah.
it would be completely different. Like I've learned and grown a lot over the years, and SafeMoon has been a crazy education through the whole crypto community and learning about tokens and whatnot. And I've become jaded. I'll be honest with you. Like I really believed in DeFi. I really believed in token projects, that this would be a way that we can, bank the unbanked and move away from this stranglehold of fiat, and to like be able to bring out all these amazing new opportunities.
Yeah.
But the way that I look at it now is it's 99% scams. Yeah. Like these little tokens. Yeah. It's really the name of the game is simple. I'll spell it out for you. Easy as day. The name of the game is to get in as early as you can. Yeah. And that's what developers try to do. Developers, they're not even developers, right? They just fork code. They don't even know how to program in Solidity.
Paste.
Yeah, I wrote dozens of Solidity smart contracts. I know Solidity, right? I can write a smart contract. I will not touch a token smart contract. Yeah. I'll build like DeFi protocol stuff, right? That utilize and leverage DeFi stuff, but I will not build a token. Yeah. I helped save a token project, right? I never started one. And then I separated myself from a token project because when I realized it made no sense to try to lead a decentralized protocol, turned it into a DAO. Yeah. So like that's my statement to everyone here is that we were motivated by money. Let's face it, let's be real.
Gambling.
We're gambling. We're degens.
Yeah.
We jumped into something because we thought it would take us to the moon and back, right? And the reality is you need a real product. If you're going to have a startup, like imagine if you go out right now and you create a startup, what do you need to do? You need to create a product that generates revenue that people want, that solves a real problem. Yeah. And then you're able to actually generate revenue and money off of that. And then you can attract legitimate investors who will offer you up capital, right, for a piece of your business. Yeah. And that's the right way of doing things. The wrong and backwards way is to hype up vaporware. Yeah. You don't even have a product. And then instead of going directly to investors who are, these people who are angel investors, venture capitalists, right? These people have been around the block. They're accredited investors. They know what and what not to invest in. They're very shrewd with their money, and they're very wise to the ways of the world and how people could potentially scam them out of money. Right. And so there's reasons why these securities laws exist. It's because back in the days of yesteryear, you would have these frauds where people would say, hey, I have this, I'm going to do this amazing thing. I'm going to sell these parcels of orchards or whatever, right? Yeah. However you do it, they would come up with these elaborate investment scams, which led to the SEC regulations to where you have to be an accredited investor in order to invest in securities. Yeah. Or there's all these regulations, protections around securities. And so if you're going to launch a token, what you're really doing, let's be real, is you're launching a token without a product. Yeah. You are asking a community to be your capital, not accredited investors. Just like in the days of yesteryear where people were going out like, hey, invest in this great opportunity, ended up being like a Ponzi or something, right? Right. And so that's where a lot of these problems lie, is when you see these tokens trying to, they're doing it backwards. They're raising all this money, then they have all this money, they don't know what to do with it. They don't even know what to build. Right. And the vast majority of startups fail actually trying to build legitimate projects. Yeah. How could you just have a bunch of money to start with from the community and then build something in the DeFi space and then think that it's going to be the next big thing? And really, it's all gambling. It's all of us hoping that we can turn $1 into $100. Yeah. And the reality is that's extremely difficult to do, and you're going to lose your shirt. Yeah. So that's what I want to put out there to the community is that, DeFi tokens, I used to really believe in it. I really used to think that was the way forward.
Solution, yeah.
I actually think the way to do it now, if you're going to launch a token, build a product, do a startup, run your business how you want to do, don't launch a token. And then if there's a reason to integrate DeFi into your business model where it makes sense and solves a real problem and is a real solution, then great, incorporate it. But you don't have to launch a token 99% of the time either.
Yeah, you don't need to.
You know, you can utilize something like USDC or something like that on your back end. If you want to like render payments, like so you're going to create some sort of marketplace that accepts, you know, DeFi payments and uses smart contracts to like fulfill merchandise or something like that. I'm just making something up.
Yeah.
You could create a dApp, you can connect your wallet, and you know what? You can pay with ETH or BNB or
an established
or USDC or something like that. You don't have to come up with a token.
Yeah.
You can use something that's just use the existing infrastructure that's in place. You don't have to reinvent the wheel.
True.
And so again,
but then you don't get free money from the community.
Right. And that's what I'm saying is that some people look at, wow, the way to get rich is to launch a token and I just buy up the pre-sale and then I just shout from the rooftops about it.
Yeah.
And then I can dump on the community. Right. And really, at the end of the day, how is that not a Ponzi? Yeah. It's just hyping something up so your bag can grow so you can dump and exit before anyone else. It's the greater fool theory.
Yeah.
You're just hoping for another fool, a greater fool to come along that buys in, makes your bag go up so that you can dump. And anyone in the SafeMoon community had an exit strategy. They weren't going to hold until the heat death of the universe. They were going to take their tokens and they were going to dump it. And does that actually mean that they're going to like buy into the whole ecosystem and all that? No, it was all a means to an end. Everything that SafeMoon was building, everything these token projects were building, it was all about the rumor, about the hype of the value going up. That's what drove everything, was the value going up, because we were all investors. We all wanted the value of our bags to go up. What we didn't care about was, were we actually solving a real problem? Were we actually generating revenue? Or were we just cycling money around each other and then just skimming off of that?
Yeah.
That's not a revenue model of like just taking money out of the volume of people trading the token.
Yeah.
That's not revenue. That's at the end of the day, you're not building anything of value.
Right.
So,
yeah. Lots of insight. Jeez. This is going to be a good episode. Tons of people are going to get educated. I've been educated, but this is going to be great.
Yeah. You got anything else? Any questions?
No.
Thanks, David, for coming on.
So
this has been awesome.
Appreciate it.
I've learned so much. He's a good follow on Twitter at CryptoCarc, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, thanks for everything you've done, for your insight.
Well, I wish I could have done more. Like I said, I come into this not with arrogance. It's with humility. And I think a deep respect for the gravity of the situation.
Right.
A lot of people have lost their shirt.
Yeah.
And a lot of people have been hurt by these actions. And there needs to be accountability, and myself included. Like I said, I played a role. It was a small role.
Mm.
You know, I helped to manage a subreddit. But I really tried to create a scaffolding, a framework of critical discussion.
Yeah.
Within that time there. And so but at the end of the day, I look back at it and I just think, man, there's so much more I could have done. There's so much more that I could do. And what do you do with the time you have? You know, you don't live with regrets. You try to move forward and learn from it. And that's what I would try to put forward to everyone listening here today, is that, you know, there's a lot of blame to be thrown around, but at the end of the day, we have to learn from this.
Yeah.
If we're going to, you know, there's a reason why you're doing what you're doing here. You want to get the word out about it.
Yeah.
And again, I don't care about some random clout in the insane asylum. No one cares.
Right.
No one cares about what's said on Twitter. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You know, it's really, it's being able to look at yourself in the mirror and say, have I done what I needed to do to make this world a little bit of a better place?
Yeah.
And I still believe there's hope for DeFi.
Yeah.
But it's going to be different now. The landscape's different due to SafeMoon. And for those of you who are investing in other shit tokens out there, who are promising the moon, who are raising capital off of pre-sales, who are spending money off of trading volume and not providing any products of real value, then you probably should get your money out, and you should probably find a real startup, real opportunities. If you're looking to invest, that's great. But I would just say, like, DeFi, there's still hope for it, but and I'm not advocating for like heavy regulation, but like, we need, if there's no regulation, we need education.
Yeah.
because there's not a lot of education out there on what not to do. It's just jumping into one crappy project after another, and it's just leaving a wake of damage. I mean, the best way to bring DeFi forward is to call out the scams when you see it. And I don't want to hear the word FUD ever again. I'm so sick of it. It's not FUD if it's true.
Yeah.
And it just shows that mentality and the mindset that you're only in it for your bag, for your money. Truth be damned.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Thanks for coming on, David.
Yeah,
Thanks
thanks for
everybody
having
for
us.
tuning in. We'll see you on the next one.
Yep.